everyone, my name is Chris Hong. I'm an artist, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. Here I have a watercolor portrait study. This is sort of a follow-up to the previous video where I do some portrait studies in pencil and walk you guys through them and try to explain my thought process behind the decisions that I make. I wanted to reiterate some of the points that I made in a shorter video that is more concise and easier to follow, because it always helps to go over these concepts again, and they may be new to a lot of people and it can take a little while to get familiar with. The main takeaway in that video when doing these portrait studies was the importance of identifying shapes, separating the areas in shadow and areas in light, preferably early on in the block-in stage, and maintaining that separation until the very end. Today we're working with an added element of color, but the same thinking applies to whatever medium you're using. So I always start out these studies by blocking in the major shapes and the contour of the head with straight lines to help identify the planes better and to keep it as simplified as possible. The block-in drawing may look simple to do, but it is based on an understanding of the basic anatomy of the face and the head. I actually struggled a bit with the drawing for this study. I think maybe I was a little camera shy, but it did take me longer than it usually does, and I don't think I was able to capture her likeness very well. But it's just a study, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. If you have trouble drawing the head into basic shapes and planes, then I have some anatomy book recommendations for you down below in the description that contain really great drawings to study from and are really good at breaking down the anatomy of the head into these simple shapes. Once the drawing is blocked in, I usually start out the painting by throwing down a base wash of the lightest and biggest overall color that I can see, which in this case is the light peachy color of the lid side of her skin. Because you can only really go from light to dark with watercolor, you want to establish the lightest color early on so you don't end up tampering with it too much and accidentally end up darkening areas you don't want darkened. While this layer of paint is still wet, you can have a bit of fun with color. Not too much though, or you can end up throwing off your values. I usually like to give the cheeks a little bit of rosiness at this stage so that the edges will be softer and blended. I like to give the planes facing downward a bit of warmth as well because they tend to be warmer in temperature than up-facing planes. This is because the downward-facing planes are receiving the warm bounce light from an adjacent object. You can also add some warmth to the ears and the nose because they tend to be redder than the rest of the face. From there, you can gradually build up the darker colors in the shadows by applying more layers of paint. With watercolors, whenever you want to create more defined edges, you have to make sure the area you're working with is completely dry. Otherwise, you won't have much control of where the pigment flows and you will have dark areas bleed into where you don't want it to be dark. Remember that keeping strong value groupings is our #1 goal, and if there is no clear divide between the areas in light and the areas in shadow, then you won't have a strong sense of light and form. So once that area is dry, I can now go in and start defining the shadow areas. This is where you start sculpting up the forms. In this case, you can see that her right side of the face is in shadow, so all other planes facing that direction should be in shadow as well. At this stage, I don't worry too much about what color I'm using. As long as the value is correct, it will feel right. By now, all the important parts are already blocked in. The hard work is done. You can't stop here, but I keep going to try and strengthen the statement. I want to really and clearly separate the areas in shadow by darkening them more. It's just about bringing out the individual features better and constant refining and checking my values until I feel like it's finished. Putting in hard edges where you want there to be hard edges and softening out edges where there shouldn't be. Making sure there's no distracting light values in the shadows. Here, I try to put the most emphasis on her eye that is closest to us and the shadow shape created by her brow bone and her nose. I should probably have done this sooner, but I throw in the wash for the background and I make sure that the value of it is darker than the lid side of her face so that the face stands out and it doesn't get lost in the background. So that is it. I hope you guys found that helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. I do plan on having another video out this Friday, so please stay tuned for that. And I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!